This is Kerrace Alexander with Deep Truth Media. Awareness deconstructing consciousness. Who would dare to do so? Who would dare to do such a thing as deconstruct consciousness? That is, we take the word consciousness and we break it down into its individuated components. So we take con, for those new subscribers, and we look at the word con in the dictionary. It means to trick and deceive someone. A form of deception. If we look up the word shus, S-C-I-O-U-S, the word shus means to have knowledge. And if we look at the word ness, N-E-S-S, it means a quality and state of being. So if we put the word consciousness back together again, the word consciousness means a state and quality of being tricked and deceived through knowledge. Imagine that. Such an auspicious word, consciousness. Yes, you're being tricked and deceived through knowledge. That is what the word consciousness means when you break it down. So here as we deconstruct consciousness, what we are doing is we are piercing the veil of deception. That is, piercing the veil of the con that's been perpetrated upon you. We're feeling into the dream. Yes, you are immersed in a dream, someone else's story. Someone else's narrative, history, his story. If we look at the astrological map and we look at it from an in-depth perspective, we can see the construct of this system of consciousness. That is the structural base of the system of consciousness and your individuated consciousness that has been infused in your biological vehicle. That individuated consciousness captured your awareness, the awareness that is you, the all-knowing immaterial aspect in the totality of who and what you are. You are nothing. You are no thing. Imagine that. You are nothing in comparison to the totality of this experience that you are having here in this third-dimensional construct. And yet, we give this life experience so much credence, so much value, more value than that which you are. Most people don't know who and what they are. They don't understand that there is an aspect of who and what they are that is captured in their individuated consciousness, and that individuated consciousness and the characters that you play out in the physical world is obscuring your awareness from you as you experience your life through the biological vehicle. Yes, you are immersed in a dream that is really, in essence, a nightmare. You have to feel into the dream. People used to tell me I was living a dream. And the power control force know that you are living in a dream. They understand at a very deep level that this is a dream that they are conceiving, that they are perpetrating on humanity, and they are using your individuated consciousness. They are using your individuated consciousness, which has captured your awareness, as a fuel source. Why? Because their genetic makeup, their genetic coding, does not allow for them to have the awareness that you and I have. Therefore, they must get their energy from somewhere, and they get their energy from humanity. And you may be saying to yourself, well, why, Kerrace? Or why don't they have the genetic makeup that we have? Because if they did, if the power control force, those that presume to run this world, had the genetic makeup that you and I have, they would not be able to perpetrate what they are perpetrating on this physical world stage. This culture of death, this death program, this nightmare that is ensuing on this physical plane masquerading as life. Consciousness. This consciousness is a quantum field of gravitational lines which manipulate your awareness. This consciousness, this structural quantum field. So when I talk about coming to know the truth of who you are as awareness and reclaiming your superhuman powers, they're not superhuman, they're the natural order of creation at the highest frequency. Therefore, as an immaterial source of awareness, when you come to know the deeper truths of who you are, raise your frequency so that you can access those superhuman powers and create at a higher frequency, be able to mold and manipulate consciousness through what? Thought. Yes, through this ether, this thought. Yeah, I just figured out that this fifth element, ether, is just simply thought. We live in a thought universe. And this fifth element, ether, that is the fifth element of the four other elements that we know very much about, which are air, earth, fire, and water. But they have kept the power control force, this fifth element, from us, ether, which is really just thought at a high frequency. They've kept that from us because that's what they use to manipulate your consciousness, thought, through the thought process, the mind, and thought, which are not yours, but the power control force use the thought process, and the mind to manipulate you. That is the subconscious mind. Most of humanity does not know who and what it is, and is forever bound in the system of consciousness, trying to figure out who they are. Can you imagine that? Really think that through. Most of us have been searching, and for many that are listening on this call are searching for that aspect of themselves. They want to know who they are. Why would you be in a system which denies you your right to know who you are, and then all you do is try to seek that information out? You try to sift it out through this information and data. You'll never find it through books. You'll never find it through the information and data stream that is spoon-fed to you by this system. This power control force system is not designed for you to figure out who you are, because you need to be what? Used as a fuel source. So they deny you your right of knowing the truth of who you are, because it's a manipulation, you see? And you will never find out who you are through information. The only way that you can find out who you are is by rising your vibration, shifting your frequency. And how do you do that when you're in a low vibratory frequency of fear? Well, you got to do that inner excavation work. You got to do that work. You have to clear all those emotions and all that negative programming that you bought into, all the traumas and the dramas and the trauma of birth that you have experienced by coming into this physical dimension. Now I want to talk to you about Isis. Isis, the womb of the mother. This Isis jihadist plot will thicken around or near after the time of September 23rd. And why would that be? Well, Pluto goes direct from an astrological standpoint. And when we look at the basic nature of Pluto, Pluto evokes a brutal side of human nature, or even the demonic. Pluto represents the processes of evolution and transformation in the universe. The cosmic energies that continuously wear down old patterns in the psyche. That is the mind, the womb. In nature and in society to bring forth regeneration of new life. It propels a revitalization of forces of birth, sex, and death in the world, aging and decaying old structures, and creating new ones in an eternal flow of changing forms. Ultimately, Pluto symbolizes the active form of divine consciousness, the restless creative principle that births all things out of the void of Neptune and inevitably breaks them down again to recycle their essential consciousness into new forms. Without Pluto, the universe would remain breathlessly serene and unchanging, with no mess and no movement. Yes, there is a war on consciousness. And they've created this war on consciousness. Consciousness and awareness are not the same thing. Consciousness is material. Consciousness is what makes up this whole physical dimension, this earth system. Awareness is immaterial. Awareness is no thing. But if we break down awareness, ness is a state of being, a quality and state of being, a war. When you come to know awareness, I'm using awareness as a term to describe that which I am, because as I raise my frequency, as I raise my vibration, as I come to know more and more the truth of who I am, which is nothing, I use awareness as a concept in order to share my experience with you. But I'm very aware that the war is in awareness, and I am very aware at a higher vibratory frequency that I operate and oscillate at this point. I'm aware of the war in awareness. You have to break down these words. It's not that I don't use that word like awake. Awake is a what? You're going to awake, a death, someone's death. What they're basically saying is that when they say that I'm awake, it's really, I'm dead. Who gives you these words? Who gives you your language? Who gives you all your intellectual systems? Who designed them? All these intellectual systems. Who makes your dream more and more real is these intellectual systems. That's what makes the dream more interesting for you in the context of history. History is simply designed to keep you engaged in the dream. There was no history. If we just started from scratch right from here and now, which we really are, it wouldn't be as interesting, would it? It wouldn't be as interesting if you didn't have to look and search through all the texts and all that information and all your past history to figure out who you are, to figure out all the riddles and tricks that are being played on you. It wouldn't be as much fun, would it? I hope you understand where I'm coming from. So really the battle is within you. The battle that is being waged on you is within you. What we are seeing on the physical world stage is a manifestation of that inner battle that we are each partaking in. And what is metamorphosizing on the external reflective is a war zone. We are in a nightmare. We are experiencing a culture of death. The death program that's been perpetrated on us. But we are individually experiencing that inner death, that inner experience of the nightmare inside, and it's reflecting on our external reflective. And the astrological blueprint that is infused within you at birth into your individuated consciousness, which captures your awareness, that astrological blueprint, your soul blueprint, is infused with you at birth. But you are not a soul. That is not a concept. That is you. You are not consciousness. These are concepts. This is a manipulation. You're using a soul in order to have this experience, but you are not a soul by any respect. And so the title of this sharing is Awareness, Deconstructing Consciousness, Transcendental Path, Supernatural Power, the Evolution of Personality, and Actualizing Your Potential. I want to direct you to a sharing that I did with Gaia, Sophia Dreaming, Michael, and I. The link is in the description. Talking about, we shared an exchange regarding current and currency and money, really. So why is the word current used in currency? Current is energy, right? And we individually flow our current when we come to know self as awareness. That current flows uninhibited, always there, effervescent, always accessible. But in this lower frequency, vibratory sphere of our physical experience, we don't experience that flow of frequency or current. In this physical dimension, we experience our current through one another. That is, it's this parasitic dynamic. We get our energy from one another, or we work for our current. We work for our currency, or we get our current from one another. And it's a parasitic dynamic. And so when you come to know self as awareness, you ever flow that current. You don't need to get that current from anyone but yourself. It's flowing through you, but you have to raise your frequency. And how do you raise your frequency? By doing that internal work, by deleting all those programs that you're operating on that cause so much pain and suffering. Remember, awareness does not experience any pain and suffering. Awareness just lives in a state of paradise and rests in a state of bliss. So the concept of pain and suffering are not concepts of awareness. These are, death is not a concept of awareness. You are immaterial. You are nothing. You are forever, eternal. Yeah, so when you come to know this stuff, it's very freeing. So if you're here because you want to learn something new, that's wonderful. That's what my hope is, that you gain some new information, but that it actually materializes into your own metamorphosis. It supports your metamorphosis. When we have reached a certain stage in our evolution, we have the power to change the level of our activity in this system of consciousness and the consciousness. We can mold and shape that consciousness. That's what it's really about. These superhuman powers is to mold and shape consciousness into that which we want, not into that which is being spoon-fed to us. And so the quality of our feelings and interpersonal relationships will change, will shift as we raise our frequency and we come to know self as awareness. We will start attracting people at a higher frequency who will reflect that which we are. We are learning how to be more than human, considering what today we believe being human implies. We are remembering what it means to operate as individual centers of awareness using our, individuated consciousness, which is not ours, but we use it because that's what we use within this system. But we understand, we are coming to know and recognize that which we are is separate from this consciousness. It's this consciousness and the activity that we do in this life experience that keeps us in this low vibratory sphere, forever manipulating us. But then when we move to a higher level, that is when we move to a higher metabiological level, we experience the separation of the biological vehicle and the mind, the thought, and the thought process, the awareness. We see the separation. When you come to know self as awareness, you have access to all of the awareness that is available, all that exists. This is the true reality of who you are, and yet we are all awareness, experiencing life through our individuated consciousness at varying levels and degrees, and yet the awareness that is you enables the forces of your individuated consciousness to interact in what we call mind, or individuated consciousness in the broader sense. And it is your individuated consciousness that provides a field of integration of the essential polarities that make up and direct your life. Now I want you to know that I did post this article in the description there, so you can read this at your leisure. I encourage you to read these blogs and subscribe to the blog as well. You'll get the updates more frequently than you will here. The consciousness of humanity develops and operates through the constant and perceived consistent organization of culture, which is our collective relationship between consciousness and matter. It is our culture that provides the foundation and the development of its people. That is through the values of culture, its language systems, symbols, and the numerous paradigms and intellectual systems within our culture in which people are born, develop, and individualize their consciousness to the level of the culture in which they are born, which operates as the foundation upon which one can reach higher and higher states of consciousness, but only within this system of consciousness, you see. You can only reach enlightenment within this system of consciousness, but you are beyond any form of enlightenment. You are beyond any form of consciousness. What I'm suggesting here is that you supersede, that you transform or transition out of this whole consciousness system. That's never been done before. That's what we're doing here when we're deconstructing consciousness, is we are contemplating the very fact that we can transcend the whole system, all of it, not just reach higher and higher states of consciousness within the system. I'm talking about transcending all of it so that it's over completely, but you still be here. When we're only reaching higher and higher states of consciousness, only a few, it seems, are able to transcend to higher states of consciousness in this system. Why is that? Because it's not designed for people to transcend within the higher and higher states of consciousness within the system. It sure as heck is not factored in for anyone to escape this consciousness system. That's not even factored in. So only a few can proceed to progress out of this system of consciousness, but that's changing. That being said, we now stand on the leading edge upon which some of us are passing from the first stage of individualization of this ego consciousness to collectively as a species experiencing an organic, supernatural re-emergence of our inherent capabilities at what some would call superhuman abilities, that is blossoming within each and every one of us, while simultaneously we are engrossed in an inorganic dystopian metamorphosis of an evolutionary kind. Now, this metamorphosis is being precipitated through this negative ego that we all have, the negative ego construct, and it creates our varied experiences by creating conflicting emotions and desires based on our programming in order to divert our attention away from our individual and our collective metamorphoses. Unfortunately, the ego, in its negative and fearful state, is able to play hide and seek and trick or treat and trick the individuated consciousness that is you experiencing the mind and the body as one, still bound by this biological animal state, leaving you addicted and conditioned by what? Your culture, the cultural collective state of your environment and your social programs, while the ego state is gradually transferring itself unwillingly and destructively to a higher level of individualization. That's what's happening for a lot of you. A lot of mental and emotional pain and suffering. This graduation of sorts into higher states of being is an individualization based on inclusiveness and interpenetration rather than hierarchy, which we live in, exclusiveness, which we live in, and separation, which we experience, which have been and continue for many to be the normal states of ego consciousness. Therefore, the transformation into this period of transition of the individualization that we are individually and collectively experiencing is a process which is actualized through the first step, that is the separation of the ego consciousness. Now, because the ego consciousness is developed and bound at the biological level, as each generation is born into their reality, that is born into a growing matrix, therefore, we are seamlessly and intimately integrated, assimilated into this physical world system. However, from our biological standpoint, that is not a particularly pleasant situation, yet people get very excited about life. But in all honesty, the characteristics of life is basically one of to eat or to be eaten. That is one species consuming the other through what I call a parasitic dynamic. And this happens all the time. It is a part of life itself. That is, life is the most ruthless principal operation embedded by and through conflict of duality. And yet we are so attracted to life. We are in fact heavily addicted to life, and we want to perpetrate it at all costs. Now, the power control force attempt to control every aspect of your individuated consciousness and your biological vehicle. Yes, this is a fact. Through your culture and all the social codes and programs that exist within your culture. This is why cultures are so heavily based on the restricting of biological possibilities, so that only a few can progress. I did not say escape. That happens when you transcend consciousness altogether out of this universe. Therefore, if you want to evolve, you must stop indulging your individuated consciousness and your biological vehicle by being caught up in your ritualized habitual patterns of thought, while still inhabiting, maintaining, and moving within your collective structures. As you simultaneously progress into a more individualistic process of becoming a whole person, which will allow you to pass from one state of your biology into a new state whereby you transcend your environment, and then you ultimately move beyond your individuated consciousness into awareness, which is the ultimate reality. What many vividly see is that we are now faced with the possibility of taking positive steps in the period of transition on our physical world stage, moving from the old paradigm of limited consciousness to a state of super biological, super cultural, and to some extent physical and more etheric and less dense physically, that is. We now have the capacity at this stage in our conscious evolution to reach a stage where humanity as a whole, the planet Earth as a whole, can achieve more than we have in the millions of years that have passed before us, because the universe, the planet Earth, And each individuated consciousness holds within it the blueprint for the natural order of creation. And what is echoing through the halls of antiquity is that every being has the opportunity to reach its individuated state of selfhood now. But then again, that has always been the case, allowing each of us to accelerate our evolution by entering the process of the path, which will lead each person, if successful, into a state of awareness whereby obtaining a special relationship with the rest of humanity. Not everyone is on this path, but I do believe that everyone that is listening here and that will be listening to the archives is on that path. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be sharing in this deconstruction of consciousness. Now, if you are successful, that is, in moving into the state of awareness, whereby obtaining this special relationship with the rest of humanity, then you are a way shower, so to say, or you become an example. We need example. Now, the relationship to some extent witnessed and hinted throughout all religions by the fact that it is a path. It is a path of discipleship. And I know that people get taken back by the word discipleship. However, what discipleship essentially means, it is a period of transition, a process of transition which requires two aspects of self within a human being expressing its individuated consciousness, having its life experiences through the biological vehicle. That is one aspect of the being is trying to ascend to its awareness state, and the other aspect of the being who is acting as the transhuman catalyst, being to help guide your individuated consciousness as you are a multidimensional being that is symmetrically rising towards a state of awareness, whether one realizes it or not. And this path of discipleship does not require you to have a guru, a teacher, but you can get one of those along the way if you so desire, but that is not a requirement. The frequencies that are bathing this planet right now are such that this process, you can experience your own metamorphosis without a guru or a teacher. That is, you become the guru and the teacher. That is the opportunity at this particular time. That being said, the disciple also needs examples of others who have chosen the path and to traverse the path as examples, because it seems that human beings seem reluctant to do anything until they can imagine it at first. Therefore, it is necessary for each of us to imagine what we are supposed to become. That is our highest potential, so that others on the path can be projections of what we can become. So my question to you is, what is the highest potential that you are to experience in this lifetime? So you have a glimpse of that. Do some self-inquiry if you don't have a sense of what that is. But ever since I was a little girl, I always knew that I was to do something great. That was something beyond my worldly experience. I've always known that. And so I'm moving into that now. It was not a very easy journey for me. It was a lot reluctant path for me, but because of the work that I have done, now I'm gracefully moving into that role, that position. Do I know what it's metamorphosizing into? No. Am I trusting? Oh, you better believe it. And I'm excited, and I have no idea what it's going to look like. But as I mold and shape consciousness in the deconstruction of consciousness, I know that that is one aspect of it. And as I mold and shape consciousness, I am what? Molding and shaping my reality into that which I want. And as I mold and shape my reality into that which I want, the power control force, those that presume to run this world, this death culture, this death program that they are perpetrating on humanity, is not in my current reality stream. And that's the beauty of knowing self as awareness, in that I have choice. I am not allowing the imposition of this program to be perpetrated on me. So therefore, it is necessary for each of us really to truly imagine what we are supposed to become. That is our highest potential, so that others on the path can be projections of what we can become. And it allows us to know that there is a higher order for us to experience, which is more in alignment, more congruent with awareness, the awareness that is us. That being said, your astrological blueprint, it does hold the information which is encoded within you as to your relationship to the universe and your physical life experience. It amazes me how many people do not want to know their astrological blueprint. But if you want a quick route as to what you are to be doing here in this physical life, that is the higher order of who and what you are, your astrological blueprint holds that information and could definitely slow down the process of you trying to figure it out on your own. So I encourage you to get your astrological reading and embrace your astrological blueprint as a map, which allows you to understand your relationship within the system of consciousness, that is, your relationship to the universe and your physical life experience. Your astrological blueprint will reveal to you that relationship between you and the universe and how to actualize your potential in this lifetime. We must also take into consideration that humanity is a colored species with numerous hues, shades in its multiplicity. Therefore, the path of discipleship is always started from different points of view. We must understand we each will go through a process of disorientation, dissolution, and emergence as we embark on our path of evolution through the system of consciousness. And as we develop into our evolving personality and through our individual experiences and metamorphoses, we will come to understand that the process provides us with a new sense of relationship, not only with ourselves, but it will enhance the relationships with others in different ways and allows us to meet those who are more in alignment with who we are becoming, allowing each of us to attract into our life a new kind of response in our relationships. That is, to be able to relate at a higher level with one another. Although the process may be the same for each of us, there are different ways to guide each of us through the path. So yes, we are on this path of transcendence into awareness. And however we experience the path, the beauty of the path is that you can start from where you are, as every individual enters the path from where he or she currently is. The path calls upon that which came before. This is really what the transcendental life is all about, and the concept of being beyond the universe, yet still existing within it. And yet it is still very difficult for people because the word transcendental has been used so much, and yet it is beyond personality in a mystical sense. You are a transcendental being, if you want to call yourself that, in this system of consciousness. And if you are using your personality to take you to the next step on your evolutionary path in this lifetime, which we are doing, and you start on the path from a position of equilibrium or stability, it rarely provides the appetite for transcendence. It can be what some would perceive as very boring, as your personality is being used to provide the change necessary for you to take the next step. That is why it is not until we are in that darkest moment will we even consider the path. We have to remember that it's a rite of passage. It's a rite in the sense that from the point of view of humanity as a whole, it is a structured process. And yet is it a process that has to be started from where you are. And anything or person that helps you, by example, to take that initial step, whatever it may be, should be considered an initiatory activity into the path, into the process of your evolution. If we look at the basic process of what we are undertaking at this time in humanity, it is insurmountable. It is an insurmountable metamorphosis in which we are experiencing a complete, radical transformation of consciousness individually and collectively, along with the physical world, the biological forms, and social structures we are engrossed in. This is a mutation of our species and planetary, solar, and universal body of a peculiar type. Therefore, this is all the implications of being who you truly are, how you relate to other people, humanity, and more importantly, how you relate to yourself. And this is all included in your individual metamorphosis. From your point of view, you can see the process as walking on the path as an individual decision that you have made as a matter of choice and responsibility. And yet, in an essential way, it is a planetary relationship, meaning your entire culture is engaged in the process that is your entire culture comes to see it in you. That is, as you walk through life, an aspect of yourself is detaching itself from the past. It's severing itself from the womb matrix as the whole planet is operating through you in a small way, which allows you to take a small step and continually take small steps. And you are never alone. This is the great illusion of what mystics call the night of the soul. The feeling that you are alone because you are taking the path as part of humanity's, because humanity is taking the path. Whether they realize it or not, it's humanity that is passing through a state of lower consciousness into higher consciousness. In a certain way, it is a ritualized process in that it has very definite stages, which are being followed despite the fact that most of humanity is unaware of the evolutionary process or even the stage of planetary development that it is undertaking. Therefore, when we have as many people as possible organizing all their potential to experience its descent into the ultimate transfiguration of the individuated consciousness or the individual's highest potential into humanity, it will enable humanity to accept the ascension and symbolic crucifixion which happens at the moment of your transfiguration. So what I'm saying here is that as more and more of us reach our highest potential of what we can experience in this physical dimension, it raises the human species to a level where they can reach their highest potential as well. And it becomes like a ripple effect. So you have a responsibility to reach your highest potential. Because unless you do, who's gonna follow? Who's gonna lead? I hope you understand what I'm saying here. That's why it's so important for you, those of you who are on this path, to come to know the truth of who you are and to live out your highest potential so that the frequency of the planet as a whole can raise its vibration so that others will want to seek their highest potential and live out their highest potential in congruent with the truth and totality of who they are as awareness. But you must be the leader. You are the forerunner. You must carve an energetic pathway for this to happen, this transfiguration, this symbolic crucifixion, this ascension. I know this is very deep stuff. You are the way shower. You are the leader. You are the one that you have been waiting for. And when I talk about these superhuman powers, they are your natural powers. They are the natural, organic abilities that have been suppressed and are just waiting to be ignited within you. They are there, latent capabilities within you. That means they're not superhuman. They're not something out there on the peripheral that is for only a few. No, these are latent capabilities within you. So what we must do is switch off that lower vibratory genetic coding and switch on the higher order genetic coding that's within you so that you can access this higher order potential superhuman powers. That's what you want to call them. Your biological vehicle must become the instrument through which you experience your highest potential manifestations. It may be difficult to consider what the higher aspects of our potential for this lifetime could be, other than what we are currently experiencing, especially when we are in the dark, chaotic, materialistic culture to which we are very much attached to, whether we realize it or not. But from humanity as a whole, the process now is a process that started in a new sense some
2,300 years ago, and now we are in the accelerated period of possibilities for humanity. Imagine that. This is a process that started some 2,300 years ago, and we are in the accelerated period of the potential and possibilities for humanity. That is to transmute itself from the past through you. Yes, you. You may be one of those channels in which an accelerated transmutation is taking place. It's not happening within everyone at an accelerated level. The transmutation is happening regardless of whether it's accelerated or not. But in some individuals in this planet right now, this transmutation is accelerating. And you may be one of those individuals that is experiencing this acceleration of your own transmutation. And the way you know this is possible is because of the very fact that our world outside of you, your culture, your society is actually disintegrating. This is what makes it possible. The disintegration is what is allowing the seed to be released within you, to flower within you. Let us not be fooled by the greatness of material success and all that society bestows on us. It's never a matter of quantity, of who has more of this or that. Your value does not equate to what you have. It is the quality of your character that is most important, and what will be venerated and remembered by all long after you leave the physical earth. Think that through. It's true. Do not think about whether you are valuable enough or that others are more valuable than you. This is not the issue, because that is the deceptive program within the system of consciousness that keeps you from the truth of who you are, which is awareness, which is the ultimate reality. It is merely a question of intensity, of desire to experience your realization of selfhood. If you feel that you are compelled by the push behind you, despite many successive near successes and failures, that lets you know that the pressure is built up enough and that this is your destiny. This is your spiritual desire. But you must be aware of it, because the awareness is very essential in the nature of your evolution of the human species, that is required in order to help you to be aware of how you can make this life a success despite the chaos in the world that is around you. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Frequency on this, it's extremely high. So I would encourage you to listen to this again. I always listen to these transmissions 2 or 3 times. And with editing, it takes maybe 6 times. But it's truly a powerful time. This is a very powerful transmission. Again, I leave you with a link in the description to this article. Read it at your leisure. There's a link also to the sharing that I had with Michael Deschene on Gaia, Sophia Dreaming. You can check that out. I thank you all so much for those of you who leave comments and tell me how much my work is supporting you and helping you to grow, because there's nothing else for me to do here. And thank you so much for tuning in.